Hello, David Moore with Equity Advantage, 1031exchange.com, and we've been getting lots of confusion or questions on what is required to fully satisfy a 1031 exchange with respect to value and equity. We call this the Napkin Test, and probably one of the largest misunderstandings in our industry is the statement, you must replace debt in an exchange. So 1031 is not all or nothing. So what I mean by that is you don't have to defer all your gain. You can choose to defer any portion of it. And in order to be fully tax deferred, you must go across or up in value and equity between the relinquished and the replacement properties. And that could be one property into one property. It could be 10 properties into one. It could be 1 into 10 different properties. It really doesn't matter. But you're looking at the aggregate value and equity of all properties being relinquished and the aggregate value of all properties being on the acquisition side. And really, like I said, it's not all or nothing. Every dollar you spend more on something than you want costs you $1. If you don't spend it, maybe it's 30 or 40 cents, depending on what your tax bracket is and what's happening in that transaction. But I've had people literally say, well, gee, should I pay more for this property than what I've agreed to because I'm going to have some tax exposure? And the answer to that question is an absolute no. And once again, I want to stress that the misunderstanding on debt that's been stated, well, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've been wrestling with people being told that the full 30 years. And, it's one of those things, debt can go away two ways. Debt can go away by going down in value, which is going to trigger tax because you went down in value. The other way debt goes away is by adding cash. So right now I'm speaking to you, it's September of 2021. And the market's just screaming along right now, but at some point we're going to have an erosion. And at that point in time, we talk about tangible assets, inflationary hedges a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the reality is if you give up a piece of property today, your loan to value, everything that's out there is going to be a little different. If you have a recessionary period of time, typically you're going to have a reduction in equity. You're going to have a reduction in loan to value of what's available out there. And so inevitably people will ask me because they've been told incorrectly through the years, well, you can't have a reduction in debt. And so they say, well, gee, should I have to pay down the property predisposition if I can't have that loan to value on acquisition, or maybe I can't get a loan on acquisition? And the answer to that question is an absolute no. You can always show up at the replacement property closing with the additional cash that's needed. You can reduce that debt or totally eliminate that debt if you're offsetting a reduction in debt with additional cash into the transaction. So we like to say you can offset mortgage boot, a reduction in mortgage, with cash. You cannot offset cash boot with additional mortgage. So once again, I want to stress it's always possible to add cash into a transaction. And in recessionary times, it's pretty much a necessity to get it done, and it's not going to trigger a problem for you. I hope this has cleared it up for you. Once again, across or up in value and equity, that's what's important. And I guess one last statement I like to make is those value and equity numbers are going to be adjusted by normal transactional costs. So you're going to back out broker's commissions, title escrow fees, tax and legal fees, hour fees, maybe current property tax prorations. Those things are all going to be reductions of that sales price, and they also reduce your net equity by a corresponding amount, and none of those things should trigger any tax exposure as boot received. Now, there are other things that could. Maybe you're paying for the buyer's closing costs. Maybe you've got lender required repairs. Some of these things are not going to be considered normal transactional costs. It's going to, ultimately result, into different tax treatment with different tax professionals. So these are conversations you're going to want to have with your tax people. If you or they have questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. We're happy to discuss it. But once again, I just want to add a little clarity to this much asked question and something that there's a lot of false information out there on. So David Moore, Equity Advantage, 1031exchange.com, and thank you for the time today. Take care. Best of health. Bye-bye. It's a little higher.